Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this Lookout webinar. I will just give it a couple more minutes for people to get ready and join. Thank you for attending. Talk to you in a minute. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Again, thank you for joining us. This webinar, this Lookout webinar is about critical capabilities for mobile vulnerability management. Before we get started, just want to go through some housekeeping items. So to join the live Q&A session, please do submit your questions in the question box below, and we'll address those at the end of the session. And then this video, we are recording this webinar. So if you don't want to take notes and you want to listen later, you can do that. Or if you need you want to listen to it again, have at it. We will have this available to you for replay. And then also, if you want to engage with Lookout and with your colleagues on this webinar, follow Lookout on Twitter and use the hashtag #LookoutWebinar to join the conversation and engage with your fellow attendees. Today's agenda, so we'll first do speaker introductions. We'll then talk about mobile vulnerabilities in the wild. We'll then go through 3 critical capabilities for mobile vulnerability management. We then have some discussion questions, and we'll also do some poll questions at the end, and then we'll answer your questions at the end as well. So with that, let's talk about our speakers. So my name is Chris Hazelton. I'm Director of Security Solutions here at Lookout. Been with Lookout for 2 years. Prior to that, I was with BlackBerry, and then also was an industry analyst for about 10 years and wrote a number of industry reports about enterprise mobility. Today, I'm joined by Sneha. Sneha, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sneha Sachidananda. I am a Principal Product Manager here at Lookout. I have been at Lookout over the last 3.5 years working on our enterprise products. Prior to that, I was a software engineer at Citrix, and I turned into a product manager while working there, and then I've been doing product management ever since. So happy to join you here today, Chris.
Thank you for being here, Sneha. Appreciate your expertise in the mobile space and also in vulnerability management as you help build out this product. So I'm pretty excited to hear about it today. So let's talk about what are some of the mobile vulnerabilities that we've seen recently here in the wild. And so one application that is broad appeal and broadly installed probably on many of your employees' devices is WhatsApp, owned by Facebook. And so just as recently as September of last year, WhatsApp disclosed that they had 5 critical vulnerabilities in their mobile application. And these were vulnerabilities that carried across both iOS and Android. And previous vulnerabilities for WhatsApp have been used to deliver surveillanceware, including the one that targeted Jeff Bezos. So the idea that these vulnerabilities on mobile are not being exploited or are not critical because it's a mobile device really shouldn't be overlooked. These devices are accessing just in a cloud and mobile-centric world. These devices are accessing the same corporate data as traditional endpoints. And so they need the same security and the same visibility into vulnerabilities for both devices and applications. So a good example of how this works in the mobile space. So you have here we have a Pixel 2 device built by LG, and it's running, that device is available on carrier A and carrier B. But because in the Android world, the mobile operators or carriers really manage the firmware process, update process, you can have different delays and different patch adoptions. So for network operator A, for example, there was a vulnerability announced in May of 2019 by WhatsApp that was pretty critical. That was patched in June of 2019 for carrier A, but we didn't see that same patch hit the same Pixel 2 devices until October for network operator B. So you may have employees in different regions or on different operators that are getting patches for those devices at different levels and at different times. And so you want to have a tool built for mobile that gives you visibility into all the levels, all the patch levels for all the various devices, even devices of the same brand operating system, but again, have different patch levels. So with that, I will turn it over to Sneha to talk about our first critical capability for mobile vulnerability management. Sneha?
Thank you, Chris. So yeah, as Chris mentioned, we will be going over a couple of critical capabilities. And the first critical capability that I'm going to talk about is as it relates to asset management. And here we're specifically going to be talking about mobile asset management. So what is the problem that customers or organizations face when it comes to mobile asset management, right? So the first thing is, as we are all today working from home, we are accessing more and more of the corporate data on our tablets as well as on our mobile devices, and that is a point that everybody knows about. But when you think about like an IT administrator, what their concern is to understand like, okay, what is that one central place that I can go to where I can see which are all the different mobile devices, which are all the different like tablets or iPads that are actually accessing, corporate emails or Slack messages or Drive and things like that. Now, now that they know what are all those different entities, the next thing is to also understand what versions of operating system these devices have. Are they like really old devices? Are they running the latest operating system? The latest patch levels are on them. And the next one, chances are a lot of the times these devices could be a personal device, right? Or it could even be a work device, depending upon the policies that different organizations have. And so in this case, the second question also comes up is what are the different apps that are installed on these devices, and what versions of apps are running on these devices. And another problem to think about here is why a traditional MDM approach will not be suited for this kind of activity, where things are based upon the idea of creating policies and having to update those policies on a regular basis and having to do some of these things, in a manual way, right? So that's the some of the problems that you can think about, especially when it comes to managing the mobile assets, which is the first critical capability that we're talking about here. So Chris, do you mind going to the next slide here? So yeah, once again, thinking about why this is different for mobile, like in case of mobile, you are thinking about different types of operating system versions, and you're also thinking about the different models that exist. Traditionally, when you have an organization, there is standardization on what kind of laptops and what versions should be running on it, and it's pretty uniform, which is definitely not the case for mobile, because we all have preferences of what type of phones we want to carry, and also if it comes to a BYOD case. But if it comes to employees handing out these mobile devices, in that case as well, there could be devices that are running older versions of a certain operating system, or does not have the latest patch as well. So the visibility for mobile actually becomes much harder than your traditional way of managing this for laptops or computers in an asset management category. Next slide, please, Chris. So yeah, that brings us to the first critical capability that's really important for mobile vulnerability management solution, which is around asset management. So having that kind of an ability where, just like you're protecting your desktop and laptop assets, starting to think about even the mobile devices as critical assets of your organization is the first important step. And having that understanding of what are those different mobile assets and what versions of operating systems are on them, what patches are on them, what apps are on them, and having that single source of truth, which has all of these different components in one place, becomes really important, right? So maintaining that dynamic inventory of these devices and applications, which is accessing the corporate data in one single place, and having that single place also talk about the vulnerabilities that are there in your environment, which relates to the mobile devices.
Cool. So, Sneha, let me just to kind of ask a kind of discussion question here. So, why is it important for organizations to really be able to assess their exposure to mobile vulnerabilities?
Yeah, Chris, that's a great question. So I think, when it all comes down to the data that we are seeing, right? So as we've all been through the past year, 2020, a lot of things have changed, in fact, where we are seeing more and more of corporate data being accessed from cell phones and laptops and people working from home. And as a result of that, we in fact noticed in our own data sets that the number of app vulnerabilities, in fact, had increased quite a bit. In fact, just last year in Q4, I think there were vulnerabilities that were discovered for Instagram for Android was one of them. And then there was also Chrome for Android was another vulnerability that existed. That specifically was the one where when triggered, a threat actor could actually send maliciously crafted HTML content. And if the exploit was actually successful, it could give attacker a capability for everything that the Chrome for Android has, which is things like camera, microphone, and other things, right? So basically, I think if you think about the way the things are moving, we are starting to see a trend where the number of these vulnerabilities are increasing more and more, especially in our device fleet itself.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. So now that we're discussing the vulnerabilities that are associated with these devices, that brings us to our second critical capabilities. So now that we understand what's the first critical capability, that is around the idea of having all your assets, mobile assets, and having the visibility of what those assets are. And the next part of it is understanding what the vulnerabilities are associated with that asset. So the first thing that you want to think about here is what kind of vulnerabilities can be present in a certain version of an operating system, right? So anytime Android or iOS releases a new version of the operating system, chances are, we would discover that within a few days, there could be some vulnerabilities that are associated with it. For example, the recent one was when iOS went ahead and released iOS 14. Then I think there was probably like 3 days or something like that. After that, we actually saw I think it was with 14.3, sorry. Apple actually notified users of three critical capabilities, sorry, three critical vulnerabilities that was released, which could allow attackers to gain full control of that device remotely. So anytime this kind of a vulnerability information is released, now organizations need to be able to know what are those vulnerabilities. And so having that kind of visibility into the CVEs for a certain operating system, that becomes really important. And the next part of it is around apps, right? So like I mentioned here in the example that I was just telling you, Chris, with vulnerabilities that were discovered with Chrome for Android or even Instagram for Android. Recently, there were some vulnerabilities that we saw with the Share It app as well as with the Telegram app. Having that ability or that visibility into what are those vulnerable apps that are there in your asset or in your enterprise device fleet, and having that ability to provide users with an opportunity to update the app, for example. So that would be one place again where you're looking for that single source where you can see all the different mobile vulnerabilities that are associated with apps as well as the devices when it comes to new operating system versions that are coming out, new patches that are coming out, as well as new updates to apps that are happening as well. They always come with vulnerabilities, so you need one single place to take a look at what those are. Next slide. So yeah, so in this case again, why is that different on mobile, right? So to kind of talk a little bit more about the point that Chris made earlier, so there are when it comes to Android and having that sort of a fragmented ecosystem, there could be different device manufacturers of Android, whether it's a Samsung device or a Pixel device, which have different versions of the Android operating system running on them. And as a result of that, each of these devices could have different vulnerabilities that are present on them. So it's not something where you have a certain operating system and that same version is present for your entire device fleet. The problem becomes a little bit harder on mobile because of these different models and manufacturers that are present. So the vulnerabilities also have to be managed in a slightly different way because it's not an all or nothing approach that you can take here. So yeah, that brings us to the critical capability, the second one, which is around vulnerability enumeration, right? So having a place where you can identify what are the different app vulnerabilities that are present, what are the CVEs that are associated with that, and then again, what are the different device vulnerabilities that are present, what are the CVEs associated with that, what is the extent of the criticality of that CVE? Is it something exploitable? Is it critical? Is it low or medium? So having that information in one single place becomes really important. And also trying to understand for these vulnerabilities, which of them actually have an ability to get updated. For example, you have a certain LG device. Does this LG device have even the latest version of the patch that was released even available to that device? Is the device even capable of going to that level of the patch? Are some of the things that you need to be thinking about when you are looking at the different vulnerabilities that are associated with a certain device as well as app.
Cool. So Sneha, I got another question here. So, what about the tools that our audience may already have? So, like, can traditional vulnerability management tools help with mobile?
Yeah, so when you think about traditional vulnerability management tools, the ones that we have looked at, there is definitely a focus there around like access to resources like that are coming from outside of the network. What specific network are they coming from? And there are vulnerabilities that could be associated with certain, like an Adobe software that's running on the device, or a Microsoft Windows, or like a JBoss. Like those are some of the things that you would start to see. But then again, like I mentioned the previous points, with more and more of these exploits that we are seeing specifically for apps that are running on the device, specifically like you could have an iMessage app, or the example that Chris you gave earlier, like the WhatsApp. So these are the more common vulnerabilities that we're seeing, which traditional vulnerability management solutions today um, don't have a way to protect against that. And also the other part of this is to think about the second point I made around the fragmentation of the whole ecosystem, right? So we have Android with all these different versions and different patches, and so it's almost impossible to keep up with everything that's going on with the ecosystem itself, right? So you absolutely need to have an approach which is a data driven approach here. So having that intelligence from a huge number of mobile endpoints, which is what Lookout does, because we have intelligence that comes from our consumer devices as well as our enterprise device, and we're able to collect that telemetry. We are actually able to make that determination on which device has that patch that is available for it, which you would not be able to see in a traditional vulnerability solution.
Great, thanks, Sneha.
Sure. So the last critical capability that I'm going to talk about here is around prioritizing and remediating these vulnerabilities, right? So I spoke to you a lot about all kinds of vulnerabilities that can exist in mobile devices, whether it comes to OS or whether it comes to apps, and also I spoke about managing those different assets. But all of this sounds like a really hard task for us to do, because there are so many vulnerabilities that are associated sometimes. And here we are only talking about mobile, and most organizations also have to think about vulnerabilities in their network. They have to think about vulnerabilities in their laptops or their desktop computers. So it just becomes a really big, challenging and daunting task to be able to do by an organization of any size. So it really becomes important to have a way to prioritize the critical vulnerabilities, right? So when you go into a certain console or a certain dashboard, having that actionable information to say, hey, these are the ones that are the critical ones that are affecting your organization, and this is what you need to do to take care of it. So you need a way to create policies for those critical ones, and you need a way to make sure that you're applying those policies such that corporate data from those devices are actually blocked. And you want to do that in a safe way for managed devices as well as unmanaged devices. So having that way to prioritize the ones that are important and taking actions on those actually becomes the most important critical capability to think about, because A, you have visibility, two, you know what the threats are, and the last thing is having that ability to take action on those is really critical. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. So again, why is this different on mobile when it comes to prioritizing, right? So when it comes to mobile, all the things that I mentioned earlier become important. So the first part of it is there could be far too many vulnerabilities when you think about the different device models and when you think about the operating system itself that's running on it. And that is the first problem that makes it hard to categorize which ones are the most important to think about. And the second one is also having those different versions that are available. Is it available for a certain device? Is it not available? So trying to keep track of all of those things manually can become a really daunting task for any organization. And to keep all of this, you also need to keep a privacy of employees in top of mind. Especially that problem becomes even more important on mobile devices, as we have seen today. So how do you make sure that you can actually prioritize and remediate the right things? In order to do that, the most important thing is you need to have the visibility into what is the most critical vulnerability that's affecting your organization. So a tool that can actually, where you come in and you're able to look at a certain a CVE, for example, that is ranked as critical or is ranked as exploitable, and being able to see which are those devices that have that critical vulnerability, and then making sure that you can set policies for them to say, okay, I want to make sure that if there is a critical vulnerability on certain device, I'm not going to allow that device to access corporate data, for example. So creating those actionable policies based on the criticality of the vulnerability and automating that in such a way that the amount of excuse me, sorry. I'm just going to take a pause here. Yeah, so automating that becomes really important for organizations to be able to manage the daunting task of having so many of these different vulnerabilities.
Great, thank you, Sneha. So let me talk a little bit about vulnerability management for mobile devices and applications. So, depending on your employees to keep their OS and their apps up to date is a challenge for organizations, particularly as threat actors are increasingly targeting these devices, leveraging vulnerabilities in the OS and in applications to launch mobile attacks. We saw the delays. I mentioned the delays that you can have, driven by the pace that different operators push out security patches, as well as the fragmentation that happens when you have different OEMs for different devices. Those create a very complex, as Sneha mentioned, a very complex environment for understanding and taking action on vulnerabilities in your fleet. So all this risk that's out there, hoping that your employees will keep their devices up to date, it can't be a strategy. I'm sure every organization has someone who just likes what they've got, and they don't want any changes. They don't want any software updates, and unfortunately, software updates also have a lot of value in bringing security updates as well. And so on the right, you see a fair amount of data in terms of how prevalent outdated Android devices are by vertical, and then outdated iOS devices by vertical. And as users are, the attendees here are likely familiar, Apple does own the entire stack, and so they are able to kind of push updates and remind users. But even then, some users do hold back and not update their device, and then even more so on Android, both from a user standpoint, but also the various OEMs and mobile operators. So the challenge is, there's only going to be more and more vulnerabilities. Mobile devices are becoming more and more capable and powerful. They're being asked to do more things, and in those asks create vulnerabilities. More applications, more capabilities create those vulnerabilities. So the traditional offerings, the tools that you have today in your environment that don't give you visibility or the necessary visibility into these devices. You may have tools like mobile device management while those can enforce updates that may, on the managed devices, you have populations of personal devices, contractors, partners that are touching your cloud infrastructure. You can't put MDM on those devices, and it can't help you with maintaining OS updates. And then MDM doesn't give you the ability to identify vulnerable applications. You can whitelist, you can allow and block different applications, but you can't create policies off of a vulnerability feed that's up to date. And then on the right, you see just the growing number of vulnerability. These are the number of security patch updates and vulnerabilities that were done year by year for iOS and Android. So Sneha talked about the critical capabilities for mobile vulnerability management. Just as a reminder, they were asset management, vulnerability enumeration, the ability to prioritize and remediate threats and vulnerabilities, and then the tool for that is vulnerability management. So let me tell you a little about Lookout Mobile Vulnerability and Patch Management. So we provide complete visibility into the software running on your mobile fleet. We tell you what operating system versions are installed on those devices, whether they're personal devices or corporate-owned devices, whether they have MDM or not. We give you a highly trusted view into the current security patches. We also talk, we also see into app versions that are running on your devices and deep into the firmware of those devices. So it allows you to having mobile vulnerability and patch management with Lookout gives you access to a comprehensive mobile vulnerability database. So we can, with high confidence, let you know what the latest OS version is for that device, down to the operating system, down to the device, and down to the carrier, so that you know with high confidence, is this the latest version for this specific version of Android in this specific region of the world. We allow you to see the latest security patches. We give you details into the OS vulnerabilities, and we also give you details into the app vulnerabilities. And then what we do is we allow you to compare your fleet against the world's largest mobile vulnerability management database. So it allows you to identify quickly those out-of-date operating systems. It allows you to pair security patches with the devices that need them. Allows you to prepare for patches so that you can let your organization and your employees understand which devices need to be updated. And this is, a cloud-focused delivery. It's a lightweight endpoint app on the device. We give you real-time visibility into threats at the same time, and then we help users self-remediate those issues. And 95% of the time, employees are able to take care of an issue on their device without contacting IT. So just to give you an idea of how mobile vulnerability and patch management works. So we have nearly 200 million devices and over 135 million apps that Lookout has analyzed with our security graph. So we can accurately help you patch all iOS and Android devices in your fleet so that you can close your vulnerability gaps. We crowdsource this information so that, as I mentioned before, we're able to, in a highly confident manner, identify the specific endpoints that need to be updated. So what, on the right, you see that, we can identify, starting at the top, the mobile threat intel, like say a CVE, we can feed that into whether it's a discovery that Lookout has made or it's a discovery that's been made public. We can integrate that into our console and have the visibility to know who or what devices in your environment are susceptible to this, this vulnerability. We pull in mobile carrier information, device information, and we integrate that into our patch management console. And then we deliver that to you, to your admins, and provide notifications to your users. And because of our consumer heritage, we provide very intuitive instructions for users to update an application, their operating system, or to remove, gently prod them, or more aggressively prod them to remove applications that are not being patched or have an existing vulnerability that won't be patched by the developer. So with that, we'd like to push out a couple polls to our audience here. So our first poll here is how many, let's see, sure, oh, I got it. Okay, so how many versions of Android are still receiving security patches by Google today? So essentially, what are the, how many versions of Android should you have actively used in your organization today? Is it 12, 11, 8, 5, or 4? So we'll just go ahead and give it about 10 more seconds here. Appreciate the participation. So we'll close it out in 5, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay. So Sneha, so what do you think of this? So it looks like the correct answer is 4. So a little over a third of you all got it correct. So congratulations. Sneha, what do you think of these results?
Yeah, it's interesting because, it's a tricky question because when I saw this first, I was like, okay, are you asking about how many versions of Android exist? Because that's like, we're seeing 12 now. And then on the other hand, you also get security patches that come up as a result of that, which are still coming up even for the older versions. So yeah, it was a good tricky question there. Just again to think about like all the things you need to keep in mind in terms of like the versions and the patches and everything else that comes with it.
Cool. Yeah, it's the things I think I mean my view is I think things have become a little less confusing with the move to kind of numerals rather than kind of dessert treats, which was kind of cool. Cupcake, but even regardless of kind of the naming convention, the pace of mobile operating system updates and security patches, it does make it very difficult to kind of keep track of everything, particularly if you have a lot of Android users in your environment. But that also applies to iOS. So let's go to our next poll here. So which of these mobile apps, grammar on my part, which of these mobile apps had a vulnerability reported in 2020? So an mobile app vulnerability in 2020. Was it, oops, sorry. We'll just, we'll count that as Facebook, and so Facebook Messenger, and then WhatsApp, Apple Safari, or all of the above. So we'll go ahead and we'll give it a couple more seconds, but it looks like everybody navigated this pretty well. We'll give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, close the poll. Okay, good job, everybody. Yes, it was all of the above. Sneha, what do you think of this result here?
I'm very surprised by this answer, but it's also, going back to what we spoke about in the trends that we are seeing as well is we saw like a lot more mobile vulnerabilities being reported in a lot of these social media apps, as well as like messenger apps and browsers and things like that. So yeah, great job everyone on guessing that correctly.
Cool. Okay, and last, let's do the last. Oh, I didn't realize this showing my desktop here. So Sorry for the family screeched picture there. So which one of these is not a cool vulnerability, mobile vulnerability name, vulnerability name? So we'll this one is probably a little harder. We'll give it a little bit more time here. And this one, we do have a fewer people participating in this one, but I can understand why. This one's a little bit harder. So we'll give it give it till we get to 50% here. 5. We're almost there, 48%. One more voter and we'll close at 5, 4. There we go. Nice job. All right, 52%. Cool. All right. So yes, so cable haunt, and I apologize. So this is I wrote the question wrong. So which one of these is not a cool mobile vulnerability name? And apology. So cable haunt is actually a vulnerability, but it's for your cable set-top box, not for mobile. The others, Heartbleed, Eternal Blue, and Shell Shock are mobile vulnerabilities. So basically everybody who did everybody is great. So we'll put it that way. But Sneha, any comments on this last poll?
Yeah, I mean, nice job in picking actually a vulnerability name itself on this one. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that that where you have a vulnerability and sometimes it becomes really popular and people start associating them with names, and that becomes really easy to like identify and think about like, okay, this is a vulnerability. How many devices are actually affected by that? So just like how you could have like a tornado or something like a hurricane, and you end up getting names for that, right? So I think this is another one where it would be good to like think about how many different ones of these that we keep hearing about.
Cool. So let me okay, perfect. Let's proceed on. So we have a couple questions from the audience here. So we'll get going on the questions from the audience here. So just give me a second to run through these. And again, if you have a question, just go ahead and enter it in the question box to your right in the control panel. Okay, so the first question is, can Lookout work with any Android device? Sneha, do you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, that's yes, that is correct. Lookout can work with any Android device. So we have because the Lookout for Work app is available for both iOS as well as Android device. We have the ability to collect telemetry from both of these endpoints, both on iOS as well as Android. And because of our Lookout consumer app, which is also present on both iOS as well as Android, we are able to understand where the different models and the different types of like security patches and the different versions that are running across like our the millions of devices that we have available. And as a result of that, it makes it possible for us to provide these updates for any kind of Android device that's available. Yep, believe it or not, we actually do see some really interesting devices, in the Android ecosystem, which was surprising to me as well. There's all kinds of devices. When I look at the data, there's like LG, KDDI, Huawei, you name it, we have any type of Android device coverage.
Cool, thank you. So the next question comes from Nick. So what trends are you seeing with browser vulnerabilities themselves? You mentioned kind of the Chrome vulnerability, and I think we saw one with Firefox as well.
Yep. Exactly. So I think in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, I think specifically the ones that we saw were the Chrome for Android. There was also Firefox for Android. That was also another one that we saw in 2020. The Chrome for Android one specifically, this one, like I mentioned, it was in version Chrome 86.0.420.185. I think we can probably paste that in the chat just so that is it okay for me to paste it in the chat here?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that you can chat to the entire audience. Yep.
Okay, yeah. I think this probably went only to the organizers here. Let me see. Is there a way to? Yeah. So yeah, I think maybe there's a way to type this into the entire organizers. Panelists. Yeah. So anyway, to answer the question, the ones that we saw related to browsers were Chrome for Android, and this one was one that triggered when, like I mentioned, a threat actor was able to send a maliciously crafted HTML content, and with this exploit being successful, it could give attacker access to the entire capability that Chrome for Android has, and which includes things like the camera, the microphone, location data, browsing, and things like that. So the resolution for something like this is once Lookout discovers that, we actually add protection for that and send an update to our users, asking them to update to the version of Chrome which does not have this vulnerability. So typically we would wait for the like Google or whoever it is. In this case, it was Google to fix that vulnerability, and then once that's available, you can actually start to see people going and updating to the next version which does not have that vulnerability. Or the other option is, in the meantime, while they have not fixed that vulnerability for these browsers, there is a way to deny list this specific app to make sure that this vulnerability is not causing any issue to the organization. So those are some of the ways that you can be protected from that.
Cool. Okay.
The other one, I mentioned was Firefox as well. No, I was just going to say the other one was the Firefox vulnerability that came up.
Cool.
That was also for Android.
Cool. So a couple questions on iOS. Lynn said, why do I need this if I'm an all iOS shop? So I think a couple questions on iOS here.
Okay, yeah. So I know we spoke quite a bit about Android here, but like I mentioned, some of these problems that we are seeing is also affecting iOS devices. So the most recent one was with iOS 14, the three critical vulnerabilities that were released right after that, which we got a patch for. But in the meantime, there is that window where iOS also has vulnerabilities that are present. And the second part of it is, one of it is the OS vulnerability. The second part of it is apps that are installed on iOS devices. And for that, you can think about some examples. I think it was probably sometime in 2019, there was actually an iPhone iMessage security vulnerability that was affected. And I think it was uncovered by Google Project Zero, and where it was possible for an iMessage which could actually read all the files that was present on the iPhone without actually having physical access to the device. And so in that case, you did see that vulnerability that was reported to Apple, and Apple actually went ahead and fixed that. But in the meantime, there was a possibility of that vulnerability being available for iOS devices. So I think we are starting to see more and more of that coming up. And so it's safe to say that you have to think about it as in a zero trust way, that you have to have that protection available and trust in zero trust should be the model to think about here.
Okay. So question from Apramaya. How do you, this might not be related to vulnerability management, but I think we can answer this. How do you control access to user data in a multi-tenancy environment?
Sorry, I need a little more clarification, I guess. Access to user data?
Yeah, how do you control access to user data in a multi-tenancy environment? I guess, I mean, we don't, one way we do control that, and I'll try this now, and maybe you correct me if I'm wrong. So we don't collect a lot of user data. We collect threat intel. We don't collect location. We only collect location when there is a threat encounter on the device, and that's just to provide additional detail in terms of researching that that exposure. We can also implement a privacy mode, and so that way we actually don't even collect just the email address, which is the one identifier we collect. And then that way, in that mode, we would collect the, say, the MDM and identifier.
Yep.
And that way, there's zero user data, actually PII, should I say, on that device. Sneha, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, when you think about user data, like Chris mentioned, there are things that are like personal data, right? So yes, we have controls to make sure that email address or location and things like that can be configured to not be collected, or even if it is collected, handle it in a way where it is encrypted at rest, and a way where if you are using different tenants, because I think the question was in a multi-tenancy world, making sure that that sensitive data is only visible to the administrators of that particular tenant and not across that entire organization level. So you have to have like security controls that make it available to be only confined to a single tenant. Now, when it comes to apps, on the other hand, MDMs typically have a way to identify what are all the different apps that are installed on the device. With Lookout, while we are able to provide that information of the app inventory, which is there in the entire device fleet, anytime there is a threat that occurs on a certain app, for example, or a vulnerability on an app, we want to keep users' privacy in mind. So as a result of that, we always don't show the application name to the admin where the threat is actually present, but that would be communicated to the end user saying, hey, you need to like deny list this app, and so this app has been denied from your organization, but without actually revealing the name to the admin of what that application is, just to preserve that user's privacy.
Great.
Hope that answered the question, but yeah, please feel free to ask a follow-up question.
Premia, and sorry if I'm butchering it. Please ask any follow-up questions if you want, or we can reach out if you have more questions. We'll go ahead and take one more question here. I think we kind of talked about this, but I touched on it, but maybe it might be helpful. So I use MDM. Doesn't that help here too? Sneha, do you want to take that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like we mentioned in the first step, right? So when you think about like the traditional approach that an MDM takes for this, there are ways that you can have an MDM to think about what version you want a certain device to be running on. But when you think about a vulnerability solution, it goes way beyond just the version that is available, but you also have to think about what is the vulnerability that is associated with that version, which an MDM like I would say that that's not really the job of an MDM to actually provide that level of information, because in an MDM you're thinking about managing those devices, but not really thinking about the security aspect of those devices, which is where we come in and provide that complementary approach to an MDM. So while it's still important that, depending on the size of the organization and what your use case is, to have that MDM, our solution would be complementary to that, where you would be getting access to not just what version of operating system is running on that device, but also what patches are available, what vulnerabilities of apps are there. So getting that security touch to that is complementary to an MDM solution.
Great, great. Okay, cool. Well, I want to thank everybody for their questions. Really appreciate everybody participating in the polls, even though I messed up a question or two of those. But again, this will be available for replay if you want to watch me mess up again, or you want to learn more about some of the topics we talked about here. So, and Sneha, thank you very much for being part of this. Any closing thoughts?
No, not really, Chris. Thank you so much for having me and spending the time talking about this really important topic that's, I think, top of mind for a lot of security folks out there.
Awesome. Great. Great, Sneha. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.